Alrighty, here we go. Ball up top, episode number 6. We're gonna kick it off here. Hunter, why don't you get us started with a little Auburn talk since the last time we recorded?
Yeah. So we did a heat check, recapping Auburn's week, Thanksgiving week, and the Players Era tournament. So if you haven't got a chance, go and check that out. Um, Not the best week for Auburn. I think kind of an ugly, sloppy win, and then a just really nasty loss on Saturday night. NC State, Auburn felt kind of in control most of the game, but had 20 turnovers. I think their average going into that game was like nine, and they had nine turnovers with like 7 or 8 minutes left in the first half, I want to say. So just really sloppy as far as taking care of the ball. But that said, shot almost 60% from three as a team. So it was enough to get a win against, I think NC State's maybe been a little underwhelming for me, but they're talented and Will Wade's a really good coach. And anytime you can get a Power Five win like that, you'll take it. But Arizona was just as ugly as it gets, and it's really frustrating to have this happen now twice in a span of less than 2 weeks. I know that this team is not among the elites in the country, but I think after that Houston game, Peyton, we really thought that, or we felt better about Auburn's ability to at least hang and be competitive and be respectable playing with some of the big boys, and that has not really been the case between both the Michigan game and then Arizona the other night. Todd Pettiford was really the lone bright spot. I think he had 30 points. He had five of the team's six made threes on the night. But outside of that, again, just really not a lot of flow or execution on the offensive end. Defensively, it doesn't seem there's a lot of communication going on. There's no help side defense ever. Um, and when you play teams that are, bigger and maybe a little bit more athletic than you, they're going to give you issues. And that's exactly what's happened. So, I'm not ready to hit the panic button, but at the same time, I think it's just becoming more and more evident that Auburn's ceiling is going to be what it is. And they're not quite ready to hang with some of the big boys yet, but that's really all I had.
Yeah, not a great week, even in the win against NC State. If you watch Stephen Pearl on the sideline or listen to his post-game press conference, he was not pleased with how he played. We had, as a viewer, one of the better shot making nights I've ever seen from an Auburn basketball team, hitting shots that you shouldn't be, fadeaway threes in the corner on inbound plays, deep threes at the end of shot clocks. I mean, Overton, a guy that we bashed for his inability to shoot, had 29 points. Um, and you get out of there, with 90 some points, all that crazy shot making, 9 assists. For that good of an offensive performance, you'd expect to see more there. And we've called out earlier this year, we had 3 assists in our loss against Michigan. Then we get to Arizona, and outside of Tahad scoring 30, we have 7 assists. Those are 3 games where, 10 or less assists. To me, that says a lot about. I don't know if that's how Steven wants to run his offense, but with Hall and Hod on the floor, you rely a lot on a little bit too much dribbling, in my opinion. You're not running as many sets. And I think when you have an off night with that form of basketball against a good team, you're going to get ran out of the gym every time. And we've seen that so far. Um, but yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said, Hunter. Like, if anything, I would say we were a little up on them last week. So this, brings you back to earth. Again, I'll still hit on the same ceiling. I see this team, good season would be Sweet 16. Um, but yeah, upcoming games, we've got, Chattanooga, and then Purdue on the 20th of December. That should be an exciting one. And then Queens, and then open up SEC play with Georgia. So, I mean, got to get right before Purdue. But it's about all I had on Auburn. Josh, you got any takeaways from watching those games, or you want to dive into Indiana?
On the Auburn side, I think that the Chattanooga game is a big game for y'all. Kind of get right, kind of exercise some of those demons from the Arizona game, and get ready, like you said, for Purdue, which we'll talk about later. But obviously, still a very tough matchup for y'all. One question I had for you guys is: do you think this is going to be more? the struggles that you've seen recently is more of a coaching problem? Maybe his son is not quite Bruce, or do you think it's more of a roster construction? Like even if Bruce was coaching, this would kind of be the same result. What are your thoughts on that?
Personally, I think it's probably a little bit of both. But again, like I just said, Hall and Tahad like create their own shots by dribbling through you or stepping back. They are both dribbling all the freaking time. Like to me, like they're both great players and I love them to death, but it's tough to really run a sustainable offense throughout the course of a 40 game season when you're relying on two guys to do all of your work.
Yeah, it's I was actually thinking about this the other night, and it also I'm almost led to believe that like the personnel is somewhat handicapping what they want to do offensively. Um, Again, it's just a lot of ISO ball. Like you've got a couple guys that are, good athletes, but to me aren't quite like pure, power five top end like basketball players. Um, Keyshawn Murphy's still not really healthy. I mean, he got hurt in that exhibition game against Oklahoma State, and he hasn't looked right really for the entirety of the season to this point, a month in. It'll be nice to have a week off between the Chattanooga game Saturday and Purdue to kind of just get some of these guys, healthy and rested. But I think you absolutely needed to snag another, viable big man that's like a legitimate playing option out of the portal. Because we're so outmatched size wise in some of these games, and I'm not saying you can't overcome that. Like smaller, faster teams win those games all the time, but it just seems to me like the personnel is not quite there to like do what they want, and they're almost trying to make something work that's just not there. So, I mean, I don't want to not put anything on coaching because I think some of it has to come back to that and how they prep and scout teams and come up with a game plan. But I just think the personnel is limiting them a little bit, and especially these games against teams like Michigan and Arizona.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it's fair to expect maybe a bit of a step back this year, personnel wise, after you graduate
No
some of the
doubt,
seniors that have been so productive.
no
So
doubt.
it's hard to go in the portal and hit on every guy that you want, and even the ones that you do want, sometimes they don't always pan out if they're making that jump in level. So I think
Right.
that's fair assessment.
Well, I guess without further ado, Mr. Indiana himself, Josh, you want to get us going on Indiana, their last, I guess, 2 weeks of basketball?
Yeah, speaking of replacing a team with out of the portal, Indiana has done the same thing, and I think we have seen some of the same struggles that Auburn is facing. I can't remember if our last pod of the Bethune-Cookman game had happened yet. I don't think it had, but we don't really spend much time on that. We ran them off the floor. The main story from the past 2 weeks and really last week was we had two high major opponents in Minnesota and Louisville, and we lost by 9 to both of them. So starting with Minnesota, um, to me that's a really bad loss. And actually, I wrote down some notes the night of just so I could have my kind of raw thoughts from the night of. But the main thing with that is that was a at the time it was a quad three loss, which when you're a bubble team like I think IU is going to be or around the bubble, having a quad three loss on the resume could be the difference maker keeping you out of the tournament. I actually looked today, and Minnesota has jumped up to a quad two. So I think their net ranking's 132, and on the road it's up to 135 is a quad two versus quad three. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on for all year for the Hoosiers' perspectives. We're going to be big fans of Minnesota this year because having that quad three loss on the resume could hurt come March. Um, so some of the notes I wrote down, shot terribly, 60% from free throw and 30% from three. And both of those numbers kind of were skewed late in the fourth or in the second half. We were shooting a lot worse than that going into like the last 5 minutes, and the guys seemed like they kind of woke up and gave a good effort. But and the big thing that stood out to me though was we were out rebounded 40 to 25. And this, I think, is just going to be kind of the theme of the year. we're not built to rebound, and I think that's going to come back to bite us against high major teams, especially when we're in the Big Ten, where there's a lot of big players and it's a physical league. Say what you want about Big Ten officiating, but they let the guys play. And I think that's going to come back to bite us against a team like Michigan. I don't think we have any chance of beating them unless we shoot 50% from three, just because we're not going to be able to really match up anything down low with them. So rebounding is something I'm sure I've talked about a lot already on this pod, but I'm going to continue to talk about it because I think that was our biggest miss in the portal, like Hunter mentioned with Auburn. We don't have a real dominant presence down low. Reed Bailey has been disappointing so far. He's shown signs of being productive, but he just seems to not have adjusted yet to high major basketball. And granted, it's only been 9 games, so there's still time. And he does do some things well. He runs the floor well. He passes well. But when he gets the ball down low, he doesn't seem to go up strong enough with it. He gets stripped a lot when he's down in the paint, which is something that, you know, say what you want about Indiana basketball over the last 6, 8 years, but we've had good big men. TJD, Juwan Morgan, Omar Ballo, even Malik Renew. Malik Renew would be a perfect fit on this team right now. But
Race.
race, yes, of course. The list goes on and on. Where we really have had dominant big men, so it has been kind of a change of style, which we expected and which we all embraced. But we do miss having at least somewhat of a presence down low. And in that game, I also had written down that DeVries has to be better, and I think he will be. He's. I mean, he shoots a lot of threes. He's a at times can be streaky. When he gets hot, he gets very hot. When he gets cold, he can get a little bit ice cold. And his shot selection, some might not like it. I don't mind. I mean, he's our go-to guy on the team. They said this on the broadcast, which I did not know this. He's the active Division I leading scorer in college basketball. So didn't know that.
Wow. Did
Yeah,
not know that.
he has like almost 2,100 points, I believe, in his career.
I believe
Um,
it.
yeah, because he had that extra year last year where he played 8 games, then took a medical redshirt after that. So yeah, no, he's definitely a go-to guy, and I want him to shoot and have confidence in his shot. But when it's not going in, sometimes maybe we have to look for something else. There's a lot of standing around and not many cuts until pretty late in the second half, and a lot of dribbling. Like I said, a lot of standing around, a lot of kind of dribbling out the clock, and not running our offense. And that some of that could be some personnel issues. Some of that could be you're on the road, it's your Big Ten opener. But to me, that's something that has to improve. One big positive from that game was Tatum Conway, and he also is another guy who's kind of been a little bit streaky. Some games he's been really productive. Some games he hasn't, you know, played at the same level. But when he decides to get to the rim, he can really drive. He can really get in and get some guys open on the perimeter and also finish at the rim. So that's been a welcome development. And I also saw on Evan Maya, this was as of like 5 days ago, so it could have changed, but he was the projected steal percentage leader, I believe is the stat. So basically he's projected over the course of the season to have the highest percentage of steals per guarding the defender or something like that. So he's definitely very handsy. He's a physical perimeter defender, which is good because um, we lack perimeter defense. We lack our defense has been pretty solid. It's been better than I thought on the perimeter, but he's kind of our glue guy there, and he's willing to go toe to toe with. He did a good job against PJ Haggerty, as did Connor Enright. I should mention, Connor Enright did really well against PJ Haggerty too. But yeah, just overall thoughts on that Minnesota game. Really disappointing. That's a game that we could come back to bite us if it stays as a quad three, but it seems like that's going to kind of fluctuate as we go on throughout the season. Um, any thoughts on the Minnesota game, or should we just jump right into Louisville, which is I know a more high profile game?
Why don't you just keep rolling, go into Louisville?
Yeah, so Louisville, we were looking to see a bounce back. It was a big day in Indy, Big Ten champions in football, and the basketball game was kind of the appetizer for that, and the crowd was fired up. Seemed like it was a 80% crowd from what I could tell, Hoosier fans, which you kind of expect to be in Indy, especially the day where the football team's playing. So we wanted to get out to an early lead and really get the crowd going behind us. Unfortunately, the team had other plans, going down 16 nothing in the first, I think it was 7 or 8 minutes. And honestly, it could have been a lot worse than that. Louisville in the first, I think they were up like 5-0 4 minutes in, and then they kind of got in a roll and made it 16-0 in like the next 4 or 5 minutes. So yeah, kind of lucky that it didn't get even worse than that, but we just turned the ball over nonstop. Um, we didn't defend well. We didn't move the ball well. This is kind of similar to Minnesota, where there's just a lot of standing around, a lot of dribbling. guys just seemed timid, and they were guarding DeVries and Lamar Wilkerson hard on the three. They're running them off the 3-point line, and we didn't seem to have an adjustment for that in the first half, or at least in the first 10 minutes. There was a good game plan by Kelsey, and they executed well, and um, yeah, we went down 16 nothing. So I was starting to spiral a bit, but the guys showed some fight. They actually made it a 5-point game at one point in the first half. And then Louisville went on a bit of a run there at the end of the first half, and we were down 14 going into half. Second half, we got it back to within 7 or 8, I think, at one point, and then kind of lost by 9. We were down right around 10 points for the last 5 or 6 minutes or so. So wasn't ever really close at the end, but the guys showed some fight. You take out the first 8 minutes, we won the game, but obviously you cannot take out the first 8 minutes. Those first 8 minutes dictated the game and kind of made it almost impossible for us to win the game. So um yeah, that was a tough watch. Um I was happy to see how they responded. DeVries took a lot of shots that game. He made a lot of shots, missed a lot of shots. Reed Bailey again struggled. And credit to Louisville, they had a great game plan. They take so many shots, and they have so many guys that can hit shots. I was really impressed with McNeely. He was the guy that killed us. Conwell killed us too, but we actually did a good job of guarding Malik Brown. And but yeah, McNeely really. I mean, they have three elite guards that can hit a
Yeah.
shot from anywhere in the gym, so it's tough to defend.
Yeah,
Yeah. One thing, and I'm sure maybe we'll talk a little bit more about Louisville. One thing I've been kind of surprised with them about is that I feel like Adrian Woolley, he's the one out of he transferred from Kennesaw actually. He doesn't seem like he's been a huge factor for that team. But I know, like you said, Josh, they're absolutely loaded at guard between Mikael Brown, McNeely, Conwell. Conwell's been awesome. I was just looking at, because I watched some of this game and I was kind of curious to go back and look at some of the box score. He and DeVries both got to the line. DeVries 13 times, or yeah, Conwell 11 times. Neither was super efficient from the field. But yeah, I mean, like rebound differential, there was none. Assist differential, they had one more. Turnovers were the same. It really just kind of felt like there were a few of those little runs with that Louisville had where they, just kind of got hot at the right time. And I think obviously the one at the beginning of the game puts you in a 16-point hole. That's tough to climb out of even over the span of 40 minutes. So that really was, I didn't really once Indiana kind of got into the game and got going, I didn't really feel like you guys were significantly outmatched or anything like that. It was just a matter of one, the lead that they had already built, and then they did shoot it well. They were 13 for 31 from three, and do pretty well from the free throw line as a team. So that really was the biggest thing I took away. It was like they just had a couple little kill shot type runs when it mattered.
I thought, like you just said, Josh, they did a pretty good job for what I felt like tempo wise. It's tough to play up with Louisville's tempo, but Indiana does kind of have the team, the system this year that can hang around with that at that speed. I was surprised that, like you said, they defended, DeVries and Wilkerson very well. That was shocking to me. I kind of expected, like, if Indiana was going to win that game, those two guys were going to play well in that up tempo style of basketball, but Louisville did a good job of containing them. I will say, Josh, overarchingly, and same with us about Auburn, like the IU talk has been relatively negative. Could you give me a take or something to look forward to for your IU buddies and fans out there? Like, what do we got going? What do we think? What's something good that you could tell about Indiana basketball right now?
I mean, I definitely think we're heading in the right direction. And I think going into the season, and we talked about this on the pod, I kind of expected us to have some games like how we played in Minnesota. I was hoping it wouldn't be against Minnesota, but I was expecting, with the offense that we kind of run and how many new guys we have, there to be some off nights. And when it gets an off night, it could be really ugly like it was the past couple games. That being said, we've also seen what they do when they're shooting the ball well and they're moving on offense and have the connectivity that we have seen. They can I don't want to say they can hang with anybody because they haven't the elite teams that they played. I guess they've only played one elite team in Louisville. They didn't hang with them. But, they showed flashes in some other games against Marquette, Kansas State, where they're able to get big leads on some Power Five competition and put them away. And of course, we've looked really good against the lower tier opponents that we played. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. I think the team is only going to get better as we go on. There's, it's a bunch of new guys coming together, and I think there's a lot of experience on the team, in terms of a lot of, obviously we talked about DeVries with his most points scored. Conaway's played a lot of basketball, Enright's played a lot of basketball, Wilkerson's played a lot of basketball. So, and then I haven't even mentioned Sam Alexis, coming off the bench. He's kind of our backup big, transferring in from Florida. And he's been great. I wouldn't be surprised if he maybe got into that starting role eventually. I do like him coming off the bench. I think he's been a great piece off the bench, along with Trent Sisley, our freshman. He's been better than advertised. He's been really good, and he's already a fan favorite, and I think he will be for the next 3 years, next 4 years. So that's been positive. And then Nick Dorn, transfer guard from Elon, who missed all of the summer. He got hurt, I think, in last January or February, and he started playing, I think, the third game of the year, maybe the fourth, and he's slowly ramping up his minutes. He had some big time shots against Louisville. I think he might have been our second or third. He was their second leading scorer against Louisville, 5 or 7 from three for 15 points, in just 16 minutes. So having him as a legit third option from behind the arc, I could maybe see him working his way to the starting lineup by January. And if once he gets his minutes going and his fitness up. But if he is like a viable option and takes some pressure off of DeVries and Wilkerson, I could see that being a big benefit to the team.
Alrighty. Is this team playing in March?
Yeah, I still think so. I think we're, yeah, I do. There's a lot of shooting on the team. The things that will prevent us from playing March is rebounding and uh, defense. But honestly, for lack of size that they have, they defend pretty decently. They make some mistakes, but they're not getting caught off guard too often on defense. A lot of the times it's just the other guys are better at offense and we are at defense, and that's why we give them points. And also a lot of second chance points, which goes back to rebounding. So I do think we're playing in March. Got another test coming up next. Well, we got Penn State Tuesday night at home. I don't want to call any game must win in December, but I would like to see the Hoosiers win that game at home against Penn State, who projects to be probably bottom three, bottom four team in the Big Ten this year. So I'm hoping for a double digit win, bounce back kind of game, and then Kentucky on Saturday, which I'm really excited about. First meeting I think since 2013, and that was no 2016. They played in the tournament in 2016. First scheduled meeting since I think 2012 or 2013, and I was reading up on the rivalry, and something I saw that was interesting was 11 of the 56 meetings between Indiana and Kentucky, at least one of the teams has been ranked number one. Obviously, this year, none of
Wow.
them are number one. I assume Kentucky fell out of the polls. I didn't really check, but I assume they're not in the top 25 anymore. So neither team are ranked, but it's a historic rivalry that has a lot of tradition between both teams. And just
That's
looking at,
probably that's probably happened less than times somebody was ranked number one. Is
mm,
both teams being unranked.
yeah,
Like you
I would imagine,
probably
yeah,
haven't had
especially
that a whole lot of
yes, especially
between
since
those
that
two.
the rivalry kind of ended as a regularly scheduled thing in like 2011 before IU kind of went through a lull. So yeah, I could see that happening. And then when I was just also looking up the breakdown of wins by location. In Lexington, Indiana's 3-10, in Bloomington, Indiana's 11-4, and then in Rupp Arena, we are 1-8. So obviously, there's been a lot of neutral site games, a lot of games in Indy and Lexington outside of Rupp, and also in like Louisville. But historically, IU has not played well at Rupp, and vice versa with Kentucky and Assembly Hall. So I'm excited to see how they bounce back, and hopefully they can show some fight, and it'll be great to get the first win over Kentucky in this renewed series.
Alrighty. Well, before we talk about the broader landscape of college basketball these last 2 weeks, I was just quickly going to run through 4 weeks, or I don't even know, 5 weeks of college basketball, our pick standings. Um, so far, this has not been a great segment for your boy. I'm in last place at 13-16, and Josh is coming up in second place at 17-12, and out in first place by a game is Hunter at 18-11. While I love picking games, and this has been equally as frustrating, making losing picks fairly consistently, you two have been on fire. I mean, 17-12 and 18-11, those are pretty good numbers.
Hey, we're above 500 as a pod, so
Yep, true.
That's right.
I think that's our goal is to stay above 500 as a pod overall, and if we do that, I feel pretty good about ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Hunter.
the 4 pick slate got the best of me the other day. I think I went 1-3. It's almost tougher when you've got like more like highly competitive games. Those to me are tougher to pick. But yeah, good start so far. Thank the big man
Hunter
above.
at 18-11, if it ended today, where are you taking my $50?
Ooh, I would have to let me see. I would want to know where the value is. I mean, I would venture to assume Michigan and Arizona are the two. I'm pulling it up. Are the two odds-on favorites to win it all right now? Um, yeah, Duke's right there with them. I tell you, for they're they're the they're actually higher than Arizona. UConn at plus 1,000. I mean, Arizona at 1,200. That's a pretty decent bet. Um, it's for a natty future outer. Can it just be anything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we didn't say, but yeah, let's say for
I
national.
mean, yeah, if I could get Arizona right now at plus 1,200 is they're tied for fourth in odds with they're actually tied with Purdue, Iowa State, and Gonzaga. I think I'm looking a little bit below them to see if there's anything else I really like. No, it would probably right now be if I could get Arizona at 1,200 versus Michigan at 600, probably where I'd go. They've got the resume. They look about as dominant as any team in the country. I know there were some things that were said a couple nights ago about about Arizona. I think Peyton pissed him off just in
Yeah.
time for the Auburn game. But yeah, that would be one if I could get a team that a lot of people right now on December 8th are calling the best team in the country at plus 1,200. That's probably
Yeah.
where I'd lean.
I like that pick, and I feel like this is probably a good time to address this for our betting group of people. If you haven't seen on every social media college basketball page out there, since 2004, every national champion is within the top 12 of the AP poll in week 6, which is where we are now. And those would be Zona 1, Michigan 2, Duke 3, Iowa State 4, UConn 5, Purdue 6, Houston 7, Gonzaga 8, Michigan State 9, BYU 10, Louisville 11, and Bama at number 12. So if you're going to place a bet, I know you like the juicy plus number next to it, but stick to those top 12 teams.
Yeah, I think if you are that looking at it, I think that's the trend's going to continue this year. Maybe Florida figures it
Yeah.
out. Maybe BYU or Kansas can get hot. But I think for the most part, those seem to be the teams that have kind of separated themselves from the pack so far, especially at the top of that list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only team that maybe sitting outside the top 12, if things fell the right way for them, is maybe North Carolina. I think they can still get better from what they are a month in, but some of these other teams, Florida, I'm not really seeing it. I mean, Kansas, if Darren Peterson comes back and can be himself, he's as polarizing a player as there is in the country. But Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, really a lot of those SEC teams. Vandy's looked elite offensively. They're ranked number 15 right now, but pretty soft schedule to this point. I'll be interested to see how they. I mean, they'll be good in SEC play, but how do they hold up as their competition stiffens a little bit? But yeah, I think it comes from within those 12 for sure.
So now talking about the broader landscape of college basketball these last couple of weeks, can dive into Duke, I guess, a little bit. ranked number 3 right now, 10-0, coming off of, as many big games as it feels like you could possibly play in a 10-day span, beating Arkansas by 9, Florida by 1, Michigan State by 6. They look as good as advertised. I think Hunter and I, and maybe Josh too, we've all mentioned at some point on these episodes, you watch Boozer play and he is good, but you're like, oh, he had an average performance, then you check the box score and he has the quietest 25, 12, and 4 game of all time.
Yeah.
He is a winner, and I guess that's the best way to put it. And Shire has found a way to do that with him and Flag. They're both, number 1 overall, I guess, high school prospects, but he plugs them in the system and they win right away.
Yeah, the guy's averaging 23 and 10 in his first month of college
and they've got a
athletics.
loaded schedule.
Yeah. As good a resume as anybody. To that point, like he doesn't really, he makes some highlight plays without a doubt, but it like when you watch a Duke game, and I first noticed this, I think when they played Kansas in the Champions Classic, like it doesn't jump off the screen. It's like, oh, Boozer just went off tonight. And then like to your point, Peyton, you go look at the box score and he had, 20 and 15 or he's averaging 23 and 10, so obviously but yeah, everything they do revolves around him, and rightfully so. He's big, like strong, and for his height, and he's just dominant. Like he bullies people. He's a good passer. He has really high basketball IQ. I think some of the pieces around him are stepping up as well. Patrick Ngongba has been awesome, and it seems like they've always got just a super reliable, defensive minded big man. And it seems they've got another one there. Caleb Foster's actually had some pretty nice games recently. Sar is okay for what he was coming out of high school, but they just John Shire is such a good coach, and it seems like every year they just play such solid together basketball, and when you pair that with the talent that they bring in every single year, it's a winning formula.
Josh, before you hop in here, one thing I wanted to call out last year, Flag, he was the guy and he was the number 1 overall pick. He was great. But when you saw Duke lose, he was trying to do too much there at the end. He had, a turnover against Clemson. Then he had a turnover against Kentucky early in the year on the last possession. And then in the Final Four game, Houston comes roaring back and he takes the last 3 shots and misses them all. If you've watched the games this week, when they beat Florida and they beat Michigan State in those games, Boozer has the ball. He's driving. He gets double teamed, and he makes the extra pass. He made it to Isaiah Evans. He made it to Caleb Foster. I'm not saying anything bad about Flag, but like he gets it. He makes the extra pass when he needs to, which I think is very rare for a guy who's been, you've been the best player on every team your entire life, and you probably are on Duke, but he wants to win, and he always makes a smart basketball play.
Yeah, and I'll be the first to put my hand up about Boozer because I brought up on the last pod about the stat about what he was looking like versus high major versus some of their bye games that they've had. And since then he's gone up against 3 high major teams and I think has had a double-double every time. So that was a very premature take I had, and to be fair, it was just a stat I was repeating. But yeah, no, he's definitely silenced any doubts that he can do it against league competition with his performance the past 2 weeks. And to me, for Duke as a whole, that Michigan State win was the most impressive out of the 3.
Agree.
Winning in East Lansing, and it was a great environment. And Michigan State kind of brought them out to the deep end, and Duke was able to tread water and stay in it, and their talent in the end won out. So that was a very impressive win to me.
Yeah. All right. Next, kind of on our list, another blue blood that has quite literally done the opposite of Duke. I would say they've probably your biggest underachiever up until this point, and that's Mark Pope's Kentucky team. They, through 9 games, are 5-4, and recently lost by UNC by 3 and Gonzaga, I believe, by 35.
Yeah, that Gonzaga game was ugly. I didn't catch the UNC game, but I was watching the Gonzaga one, and they they just looked like they were just playing iso ball on offense. And Pope looked like he didn't have any answers on the sideline there. He looked like he was frustrated with how they're playing, but he didn't seem to make any adjustments, or at least any adjustments that the players listened to. So if I'm a Kentucky fan, I'm not like I'm definitely concerned about the season. I think the season has a chance to go really poorly for them. I don't think I'm calling for Pope's head yet, although Kentucky fans I'm sure are. I'm sure Rupp Rafters, the message board is going crazy right now.
What do you mean, man? They're a reasonable bunch.
Yeah, always have been. Um, but yeah, no, there's definitely cause to be concerned if you're in Big Blue Nation.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense other than they are a poorly coached team. Um, they're so talented, even without, they went a little spurt without uh Low, and then obviously Quaintance hasn't played at all this year, but um it's so crazy to me. And I think Diabate actually has missed some time as well. So they're not healthy, but Otega Owe hasn't been overly impressive. Aberdeen he shows flashes, but not anything great. The UNC game is actually a good game. I caught most of that one. It was highly competitive. As like UNC didn't shoot great from outside. Kentucky was 1 for 13 from three. They couldn't hit the wide side of a barn. Um, but really was kind of a dig your heels in defensive type game, which I was not expecting. I thought and Caleb Wilson did have a good game, but I thought both sides were going to be just lighting it up offensively, and it wasn't really didn't really play out that way. But it was a highly competitive game. But yeah, it just every time I watch them, I'm like, and you see just even what they've got on the floor, I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. And I didn't catch much of the Gonzaga game Friday night, but didn't seem like there was much to watch there.
Yeah.
They're the opposite of resilient. You hit them in the mouth, they fold
Yeah.
every single time. Uh,
Yeah. That Zaga game was in Tennessee in Nashville, and it was 98% Kentucky fans there, and they were getting beat off the court at halftime. So bad times in Lexington.
Not a good look. All right. Next, Purdue. They've had up until this point, I would have said it like maybe the number one, they would be the number one team, them or Arizona. But then recently, a 28-point loss in Mackey to Iowa State. Don't get me wrong, Iowa State's good, but I mean, Purdue, and on paper, you should be the better team. You're also at home. And if I read the stat correctly, I think is that Painter's biggest loss at home.
I think I saw
As
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
Rawson tweeted that he is wrong. Indiana beat them by like 30
Um,
at Mackey a few years ago. But
There you go.
yeah,
Let them know.
I think it's the second or third biggest loss they've had at Mackey.
Crazy. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I watched a little bit of that game. Braden Smith, he played like pretty good. Lawyer and Kaufman Wren were MIA. They provided zero help. I think that's a little bit of a testament to Iowa State's length and the defense that they've played this early in the season. They've kind of been my surprise team up until this point. They've looked great in every aspect, but again, 28-point loss is tough one to stomach. I will say there's been like even for some of these ranked teams, like a lot of blowouts in some of these games.
Hmm.
It's kind of crazy. I don't know what that says about today's day and age, whether it be coaching or NIL or just how the whole format works, or if we're just, kind of in a weird spell of the basketball year. But I mean, it was crazy. Did you guys watch any of this game?
Yeah, I caught the second half of it, and just looking at the score, the thing that stands out to me the most in this is how Purdue shot the ball. 4 from 18 from three and 6 from 14 from free throws at home. You're shooting 43% from free throws at home. Obviously, say they make all those 8 extra free throws, they still lose by double digits. But I think it's more of an overarching point that um, that's a cause for concern is you're missing free throws at home in a highly ranked game. Um, and yeah, like you said, TKR and Fletcher Loyer went MIA, and when that happens, all the weight's on Braden Smith's shoulders. I don't know if CJ Cox is going to be able to contribute enough when Loyer
Yeah.
goes missing. So yeah, for Purdue to have the season that they want to have, their three-headed monster has to show up in these big games, and in this game, only one of the three showed up.
Yeah, it's and I'm not gonna put a ton of stock into this result. I mean, if Purdue continues to show signs of reasons to be concerned, then I will get there. But I mean, I think just the way their roster is made up, they were outcoached, they were smothered on defense, and they didn't shoot it well. And Iowa State did all those things well. And I was I've been thoroughly impressed with Iowa State just throughout the year. I mean, you lost Keyshawn Gilbert, who was obviously their leading scorer, the last year or two. But they're complete. They're solid. I mean, Joshua Jefferson, Momcilovic, Tamin Lipsey, like a lot of these guys have been around for a while, and they just have played really solid. I mean, they squeaked one out against St. John's at the Players era, but I think at the time we were like, that's a big time win for them. I think I expected St. John's to win that game at the time. Um, but time will tell if this was an anomaly for Purdue or if this is something to actually be concerned about going forward. But yeah, I mean, Iowa State, they deserve the praise right now without a doubt because that was a beatdown.
Kind of crazy about them is in they have one of the better home court advantages in college basketball. And you look at all
Yeah.
those big wins, they're all on the road or neutral site. They haven't even gotten like that. If that's one of their secret weapons, they haven't even used it yet. All right, next on the list, we've got our Tennessee Volunteers. An electric start to the season. Ament looking every bit as good as advertised, maybe even better. And then their last three games have not been kind to them. 5-point loss to Kansas without Peterson. That was kind of surprising. And you got a bounce back spot. You get to play Syracuse. You lose that game too. And then you play Illinois. Illinois to me is probably better than them on paper, but you lose by 13 to them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think after that Houston game, I was like, all right, and I maybe bought in a little too early because Tennessee had not played anybody up till that Houston game. They won a close one on a neutral floor where there were virtually no crowds. Um, and yeah, they've hit a skid for sure. I think I don't want to say it's characteristic of Rick Barnes teams to kind of lose some of these weird games that they shouldn't, but I just feel like there are a lot of times where Tennessee just kind of lacks that like pop on offense. And I would argue outside of maybe like the Dalton Connect year, this is the most. I mean, Gillespie and Ament are as good an offensive duo as they've had that I can remember. I mean, maybe like Schofield and Grant Williams, but um, and they've got length. Felix Akpara's been a stalwart in the middle for them for a couple years. Yeah, I don't know. I think Tennessee is another one that I'm kind of interested to see how things play out for them over the next few weeks because you know bought in a little bit on them after that Houston win. I thought that was really impressive. I didn't really expect them to win that game, and then you lose to two, maybe three teams that you shouldn't. I don't know. The Illinois game was probably a little bit of a toss up, but shouldn't they were the better team than Kansas. They were absolutely the better team than Syracuse. So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. I don't. Do they have any other? Yeah, they sure do. I was starting to say, do they have any other notable non-con games a week from tomorrow, next Tuesday? They play Louisville, um, in
Classic
Knoxville. So
styles there.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, just looking at that Illinois game, you guys kind of hit on it. It's when Ahmet and Gillespie aren't going, those guys took half their shots, more than half their shots in the
yeah,
Illinois game. So if they're not hitting their shots, then their team's gonna struggle. especially when, the overall team shot 37% from the field and 44% from the free throw line. When you're playing a good team like Illinois, uh, you got to shoot the ball, obviously, and they struggle to do that. And it's not like Illinois shot 57% from the line too. So Illinois shot well from three at 39%. But I think a lot of it comes down to missing shots at the line is I don't want to say it's an indicator of obviously it's a big factor in how the game goes. And I don't want to say it's an indicator of like preparedness or focus, but at the end of the day, those are free throws. They're free for a reason. You should be shooting 75% at least pretty consistently if you want to have a chance to be a successful team. So early struggles from the free throw line is something I'd keep my eye out on with Tennessee, kind of how we mentioned with Purdue.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they out rebounded Illinois by 15 in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Good
Yeah,
Lord.
that's crazy. Yeah.
Hunter, you hit on Rick Barnes, and I, up until Edie, kind of had the same take on Painter. These coaches always put together a good regular season, but struggle to do it in March. Tennessee losing these 3 games, I know it's early, and I think that they will be good. It will be in the back of my mind when filling out my bracket if you can find ways to lose against, scrappy, but teams that are less talented than you. And I already doubt your coach. I don't know how far I'll be taking them in March.
Yeah. And I just looked at the Syracuse game that they lost by 2 points and they shot below 60% in that game as well from the free throw line. They shot
Wow.
what? And I think they're at 77% against Kansas, but two games in a row where they struggled. So something to keep an eye
Yeah.
on going
I
forward.
mean, and in these close games, like how many times when you see a game that's within, 5 points and you're calling out the team that lost for missing, you know, 7 or 8 plus free throws. Like it's if you're looking for something, Josh, to your point, if you're looking for something that might be indicative of something else to happen down the line, that's absolutely something that can create alarm bells for a team because you're going to be in close games in March, and like you said, finding ways to lose games is not a good trait to have, given what a postseason looks like in college basketball.
100%.
All right. Well, honestly, pretty good transition into Illinois. Lost by 13 to UConn, and then returned the plus minus by beating Tennessee by 13, breaking even in those 2 games. Illinois, it's a team that I've been on the wrong end in a lot of my picks. I can't really understand them. There's a good basketball team. They're very experienced. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They win a lot of their close games. Like a lot of the reasons why you wouldn't pick Tennessee in March are a lot of the reasons why you probably should take Illinois. UConn is a wagon.
Yeah.
That was a tough athleticism matchup for them. But then, again, turning right around and handing it to Tennessee, that's a great bounce back win. And I think that's an important stat too in the duration of a 30-game season when you're playing in a loaded conference like the Big Ten. You get hit in the mouth, and how do you come back? And they showed that they could do that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Illinois is a really good team. To me, I think they're probably in that top tier in the Big Ten. I'd probably say Michigan, Purdue, Illinois, and Michigan State have kind of separated themselves from the rest of the pack. So probably see them contending for a top 3 seed, I would say, maybe up there with the top 1 or 2 in the Big Ten as well. So they definitely have some things they can improve on. In that UConn game, they shot 32% from the field, and really Boswell was the only one who seemed to be scoring effectively. Everyone else really struggled from the field. And credit to UConn and to Dan Hurley on his defensive scheme that he had in that game. His teams always bring the intensity on defense, and they really seem to affect Illinois. But yeah, no, I'm not. That game doesn't really give me too much concern for Illinois going forward. They've already had some big wins over Tennessee. They have big wins over Texas Tech, so I could see Illinois being a factor in the second or third weekend.
Yeah, one of the things I feel like about Illinois is they kind of have options. Like if your guy, we talk about, I mean, for the easy example for me, for Auburn, it's like, if Keyshawn Hall or Todd Pettiford isn't on and going, that's not half, but damn near half of your production, it feels like on any given night. Like Indiana can go to Boswell. I mean, Stojakovic didn't do anything. I mean, he scored 5 points over 2 games against UConn and Tennessee. um, after having some massive performances like in the Bama game. Um, but I mean, between the Ivasiches, Kylan Boswell, Stojakovic, Wagler, like they've got guys that can step up and score if one or the other is having a little bit of an off night. So I think that's a good trait to have when you sit down and look at your team and what you've got going forward, and you're trying to assess like, hey, who has potential to be resilient if one of our better players has an off night. And I think when you look at even just looking at like their team stats, like they have four guys averaging 14 points a game. Um, so they've got options and they're deep. And I like this Illinois team. I don't know what the ceiling is. I think that's what I question more than anything with them, but they're playing good basketball for sure.
Yeah, Balk and Brad did a great job with the roster construction.
Yeah, the orange scare. All right, another Big Ten team, Michigan State. Up until this point, through 9 games, 8-1. More recently, coming off a 19-point victory versus Iowa, and then a loss to Duke by 6 points. They've looked great.
Yeah.
Izzo's got a team that plays team basketball and really buys into what he's preaching. And Josh hit on it earlier. The crowd in East Lansing for that Duke game was awesome. I
Yeah.
watched that entire game. Um, Honestly, at no point I thought that Michigan State really controlled that game for 35 minutes. The last 5 minutes they went cold. That might be one of my only concerns about this Michigan State team. Where do you go for a bucket down the stretch? Because Fears has been great, but by no means is he a next level scorer. I think in this
Mhm.
game he went 0 for 9 with 0 points. He can still contribute because he's a great defender and he rebounds well for a guard, and of course he's arguably the best passer in the country. But their only loss is to Duke, who again we could argue is the best team in the country, and I felt like they controlled that game basically from start to finish.
Yeah, they've been really impressive. Before Duke, they mopped the floor with Iowa, which has had a great, not a great, has had a decent season so far. And another concern I have with Michigan State is, can that intensity and that defense and the ability to find ways to win games translate to road games in the Big Ten? All of their games that they played so far have been at home or neutral site. So we really haven't seen them go up against a hostile crowd. At the very least, it's been a 50-50 crowd, or they've at least had a decent amount of fans there in some of their neutral site games. So we'll see if that can carry on into the Big Ten when, they're going into Mackey or they're going into Ann Arbor, and, it's going to be a hostile environment. But yeah, no, they've been very impressive. Definitely have exceeded my expectations for them that I had going into the season. And like I mentioned, I see them in that probably in that fourth spot, third or fourth spot in the Big Ten right now in that top tier.
Yeah. No, I mean they just play such solid team basketball. Like obviously Tom Izzo is a great coach, but I mean they're among the elites defensively with the Houstons, the Iowa States, the Michigans. And I think for me it's more about, do they have the sustained offensive production to carry them far in March? I know they're gonna play really good defense. They do a great job communicating, and maybe they run into some troubles with like communication defensively when they get into a hostile environment, like you're talking about, Josh. But to me, the defense is the thing that you can almost rely on a little bit more to translate when you go into some of those tougher environments, more so than offense. Um, and it Fears is just so steady. I mean, he's a facilitator. He's a pass first guy. Like he takes care of the ball. He does the little things really well. Um, but it just feels like if something's going to do them in late in the year, it's going to be a team getting hot where Michigan State just can't quite match the production offensively.
Yeah, and that's kind of been their Achilles heel for the
Yeah,
past,
for
I don't
sure.
know, since 2017 or so under Izzo, past 5, 8 years. And I think that there's some stat, I don't know exact numbers, but um, on every champion since like 2005 or something has been like top 20 in offense and Ken
Hmm.
Palm and like top 40 in defense. And looking at Michigan State, they're 38th in offense, 5th in defense. So if they're going to want to have a chance to make a serious run in March, they're going to have to figure out to be a little bit more efficient on offense and maybe have a guy or two step up and prove themselves down the stretch.
All righty. So
Yep.
now we'll kind of hit on, our national preview, what games we got coming up the next 2 weeks before we release another episode, maybe some call outs or predictions as to what we think's going to go on. A lot of these games are, neutral site, which is kind of weird. Start,
Lame.
yeah, I know.
Play games on
Starting,
campus.
yeah, no kidding. Starting off first, tomorrow night, actually, Florida is playing UConn. It's in MSG, which UConn is now kind of making a regular spot to play their big basketball games. Credit to Hurley. Um, yeah, so 18 Florida, kind of underwhelming this year. Kind of talked about it at the beginning of the season. They lost so much production, and I don't think the national media hit on that enough. They got the top two guards, arguably, in the portal statistically with Fland and Xavier Lee. But those guys, outside of Fland in that Duke game, they have been very inefficient, and that has resulted in a couple of their losses. And then UConn's been great. I think they're elite when Terrace Reed is playing. When he's not, they've shown a little sign of weakness. Um, that being said, Florida's a tough team, a good defending team. They got some big guys at forward and center, but again, if Reed's playing and this is in MSG, I think the story's going to be the same for Florida. A good game that UConn comes out on top of.
UConn rolls in this game.
Okay.
I think everything that Florida does well, UConn can do better. I am not sold. Boogie is, again, the talent's there. I'd like to see a little bit more just because it's consistency out of him as far as being, an offensive kind of leader and catalyst. Because Xavier Lee has been maybe even underwhelming from. I know we weren't maybe quite as high on him as some of the national pundits were, but he's maybe been even less productive than what I expected. Um, I think you've got guys like Terrace Reed and Caravan that can go toe to toe with Hauk and Condon and some of those guys. I think Florida will. I mean, Florida's biggest strength is their front court depth. Like they've got four legitimate guys with those two, and then Chinyalu and Micah. Um, but I think UConn has enough in the front court to match them, and then also their guards are just flat out better. So I would not be surprised to see UConn win this game by maybe even 15 or 20.
Yeah, the only thing I would add on to the Florida side would be their on Torvik, their assist rate is 52.4%, meaning they're only assisting on 52% of their total points scored, which is 186 in the country. And like both of y'all mentioned, that comes back to guard play. Those guys aren't doing a good enough job of distributing the ball and again finding the guys when they're open. And some of that might be how the offense is running, but I think a lot of it does fall on Lee's and Flan's shoulders. So y'all kind of already touched on that. And as far as UConn, the only thing I'll add, I'll stump for Braylon Mullins getting back, getting his first action is my pick for the newcomer of the year in the Big East. I'm still salty he's not wearing cream and crimson this year, but he only played a few minutes in his first game, didn't really make an impact. But in his most recent game, I think he played just under 20 minutes and might have been their leading scorer, second leading scorer. So he's starting to come along. I would imagine he'll work his way into the lineup, but if not, be the first guy off the bench and get 25 minutes a game. So UConn's scary. I would agree. I'd probably think UConn's going to win this game, especially in New York, but you never know. Florida still does have a lot of talent.
Yeah, I've got a quick little something for our viewers to think about here, and I think I've talked to you guys both about it. Thomas Howe, he has been awesome this year. Someone tell me what the difference is between Cooper Flag and Thomas Howell. Yes, the obvious. They're both 6'10" white guys.
5 years.
Yeah, the age difference, sure, but Flag got the national attention his whole life. He's playing 40 minutes. He's on a team loaded with people around him. Not that Haug isn't. And he's getting the ball. They're playing through him all of the time. I think Haug is criminally underrated. Again, I guess this is the second time I've kind of talked down on Cooper Flag. I'm not a I'm not a hater, but I think there needs to be a little more respect to Haug, and why can't he do this at the next level? Why shouldn't he be a lottery pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the stats. I think if he continues to play at the level he's been playing at all year for the rest of the season, he'll start to get that the national media respect. But Flag was just so hyped coming into college that he was kind of started off on a uneven playing field. But I agree, he's been there, definitely been Florida's brightest spot of the season so far.
Has Hauk ever cooked LeBron and KD in Team USA practices?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good counterpoint. I don't think so. He's cooked Chingaloo.
Yeah, but I'm with you on Tommy Hauk. I think we all even maybe agreed before the season that he was going to be their best player and leading scorer. You saw the potential last year. You were kind of just waiting for him to have an opportunity to kind of step into more of a lead role. And he's been awesome. I mean, uh, again, Josh said it. Like, I still think Florida's very talented. I think they'll go as far as Lee and Boogie can take them. You saw it the other night when, big time possession at the end of the game, and Boogie coughed it up against Duke to lose that game. And I didn't even know, Josh, that stat about the assist rate, but I believe it because it just feels like those guys have not done a good enough job kind of igniting that offense, getting, you know, having Houck and Condon in position where they can go and get their buckets. You just haven't seen a lot of it from the two of them. And that's not to say, we know Boogie Flam was a highly touted recruit. Xavier Lee was obviously one of the top guys out of the portal. It's not to say they can't get there, but it remains to be seen.
Alrighty, our next game we've got on the 13th, which I believe is a Saturday. We've got number 17 Arkansas playing number 16 Texas Tech at the American Airlines Center. I don't have a whole lot to say about this game other than I'm really excited to watch it. Both of these teams, to me, I think Arkansas has maybe been a little bit better than I thought this early in the year, and Texas Tech maybe has slightly underperformed. I think they're both very athletic teams who, Arkansas is very long and Texas Tech plays good defense. I'm kind of interested to see what the over-under is on that game. But yeah, that'll be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, Cal seemed to have done it again to hit on two freshman guards and
Yeah.
Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas. They've been very impressive so far, and probably they're Arkansas's two best players. Which again, that's kind of what Cal feeds on is recruiting those freshman guards and getting the league in 1 year. So I agree with you, Payne. I think it's gonna be a fun one to watch.
Yeah. Acuff's a stud. He can score at all three levels. He, does a fairly good job, facilitating and taking care of basketball and some of those things. Both of these guys absolutely look the part of the draft praise that I'm sure they're getting. I think I kind of like mentally wrote them off a little bit when in reality they've lost. I mean, they have two of the better losses. I mean, you lose at Michigan State by 3 in your second game of the year, and then you lose. They kind of let Duke get away with that one. Arkansas actually was in control for a decent portion of that Duke game on Thanksgiving night, and Duke kind of went on a little run to end it. But statement win against Louisville the other night, I was not expecting that in the ACC SEC Challenge. So again, Cal teams are going to be talented, and they do have a decent mix of between their two freshmen that are leading the team in scoring, but Brazil, DJ Wagner, Nick Prink, like some of these guys have played a lot of basketball and played in NCAA tournaments. And so they do have some experience. So yeah, I'm with you. This is an interesting game to me. I think Texas Tech has looked a little underwhelming in spurts, but we obviously know what they've got there between Toppin and Anderson and those guys. So kind of a fun one that maybe doesn't jump off the page for most fans, like a UConn, Florida, or some of these other games that are coming up.
Any predictions in this game?
Mhm. Where'd you say it was?
Where? Yeah, I was gonna say where is it?
American Airlines Center.
In
It's
Chicago?
in Dallas.
Dallas.
It's
Okay.
in Dallas. Yeah, yeah,
Dallas.
that's right.
So that's like a
Um,
pseudo home game for Tech.
I probably still would think Arkansas. I mean, to me, Arkansas is at or very early in the season. I'd put them at number two in the SEC behind Bama.
Yeah, that's fair.
You could argue, obviously, Vanderbilt, but they haven't really been tested yet in Florida as well. But to me, Arkansas is a serious contender for the SEC. And yeah, I've enjoyed watching them play so far this year.
Alrighty. Well, also on Saturday, we've got number 1 Arizona in Birmingham against number 12 Bama. Um, Again, kind of a clash of styles. Zona can run it if they want. They're not a big 3-point shooting team. They take a lot of time on offense. They run great sets. I mean, I said they peaked too early. Clearly, I was wrong. They're a really, really good basketball team. And Alabama, I'm not sold on them yet. They're in the top 12, so I guess by that metric, they could win a national championship. I saw Bethea played last game and scored 20-some points off the bench. I think having him there, and if you can get Holloway going along with Phylon, who has been, AP first team with the stats he's put up to this
Yeah,
point, could be an interesting game. Maybe I'll continue to double down. I like Bama on this one.
I could absolutely see it. Um, One, because Auburn just got pumped by Arizona, it would only make sense that Alabama turns around and beats them a week later. Um, no, I mean it really. I know I've said this over and over about Alabama, but like if the shots are falling with the style and the pace that they play at, like they really could run anyone out of the gym on any given night. That said, other side of the coin, it can look a little ugly at times. Outside of Phylon, Phylon's been extremely consistent. I think he's playing his way into being a lottery pick and maybe even, further up the board, especially being a 6'4" point guard. Holloway's been hurt. I don't think he played yesterday either. So he's missed some time. I know Wrightsell's, again, still dealing with his injury from last year. I think he came back and played yesterday, but um, Alabama absolutely has the pieces. They've got, some of the size to hang around with Arizona that you saw give Auburn fits the other night. Um, I think the pace that the game is played at will kind of dictate what the outcome is, and that's not to say Arizona can run, um, but I think knowing that Arizona's not like they're very good defensively. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't quite put them in the category as like you know Duke or Michigan or some of those other teams. Um, could be susceptible to some runs from Alabama's side. Alabama's obviously going to have the home crowd in this one, so would not shock me at all to see Alabama win this game. I think it really just depends on who's going to step up and hit some shots around Phylon. Is it going to be Aiden? Is it going to be Latrell Wrightsell? Houston Millette, some of those guys, but Alabama's got the horses to win this game without a doubt.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Should be a fun one to watch.
Yeah,
Torvik has it, Bam, or has Arizona favored by zero point 0.6 points and a 88-87 projected final score. So take the points. Should be a fun one.
Alrighty, that brings us to on the 16th of December. We got number 11 Louisville playing in Tennessee. Finally, not a neutral site game. Number 20 Tennessee. Um, you know, the way Tennessee's looked the last 3 games and the stylistic clash. I mean, this is a big game of like clashing styles. I think Louisville gets this one done, and I'll say to similar fashion. Hunter saying UConn over Florida by a lot. I like Louisville by a good margin here. I'm curious to know what that spread is in a true road game. I would assume it's like probably 6 to 8 points. But I think I'm taking Louisville there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it's a true stylistic clash. Barnes is going to double down on that and really try to slow down Louisville. But having just watched Louisville play, they're tough to slow down. They run up the floor. They like it's almost better to turn the ball over out of bounds with them than it is to like miss shots, just because they get the ball and they're gone. So that's gonna be a fun one to watch. It has Torvik has Tennessee by 2.5 right now,
Are
but
you serious? Wow.
that's
yeah,
well, that's probably just because of you know being played in Tennessee, and also the metrics still do like Tennessee. They have Torvik has Tennessee as 18th in the country and Louisville as 13th. So pretty even metrics, and then the edge goes to the home team. But yeah, like you said, it's going to be a stylistic clash, and I agree. I don't know if it'll be a blowout just because Tennessee's a tough place to win in, but I probably
yeah,
would lean Louisville on this one too.
yeah. I would lean Louisville as well, just knowing how dynamic they are on offense, how many guys can go and get it for them. But sometimes those matchups are weird when you get against these defensive minded teams. Makes it a little bit tougher to predict because you're like, what if Barnes comes in and they just like put the clamps down, completely disrupt what Louisville wants to do offensively. Like you've seen situations where that happens, and then obviously you throw in the home factor. Um, or it could be a situation where we've seen Jacoby Gillespie be really, really good. Um, Nate Ament is really, really good, and I think Tennessee has some of the pieces to be competitive in this game, but it's really hard to ignore what Louisville's doing offensively, how well they shoot it outside, how quickly they get out in transition and run and just kind of really just run teams off the court at the end of the day with the style they play. So yeah, I would lean towards Louisville as well, but not totally surprised to see that Torvik line where it is on this one.
All righty. And then the last game we highlighted on December 20th, number 3 Duke, also playing in MSG against still at the time, number 16 Texas Tech. Um, this is going to be an interesting match down low. Duke has got three, 6'10", 6'11" guys that play big minutes, and then, obviously topped by Boozer. And then you've got Texas Tech that plays a lot of physical basketball outside of Christian Anderson. They get a large production of their scoring from their 3 through 5, being led by JT Toppin. I'm really excited to see those two, a clash of Titans down low. Um,
Absolutely.
I
All
love
eyes, all eyes on Toppin and Boozer in this one.
I love JT Toppin. I think this is a tough game for Texas Tech. Just the way that Duke has played, and they've found ways to win. Like we said, Arkansas had them on the ropes. They win by 9. Michigan State had them on the ropes. They win by 6. Like they just find ways to win.
Yeah, I would lean towards the consistency here that I've seen from Duke, and just playing, really clean basketball games and finding a number of different ways to win. And um, Texas Tech's been a little shaky at times. The talent is undeniable. I mean, Anderson and Toppin are as good a scoring duo as there is in the country. Um, and that's always something to look out for anytime a team is undermatched, but they've got guys that can go light up the scoreboard. But I just think from a depth standpoint, from a size standpoint, Duke just does so many of the little things well. So I'll lean towards what's been a more consistent product to this point in Duke.
Yeah, I like Duke in this one as well for all the reasons that y'all just mentioned. And you said this game's at MSG. I would imagine it's going to be
Duke
95,
North,
90%. Yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah,
probably more Duke
Durham
grads
North.
in New York than there are in North Carolina.
yeah,
Yeah,
Luke Smith's up there, Duke grad.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah. Known
He
known
could be the
Duke fan.
difference. But yeah, no, I agree. Texas Tech hasn't looked maybe at the level that we've expected them to. But credit to Texas Tech, they've had a tough non-con schedule. And this should
For
be an
sure.
interesting game. I hope they keep it close and make it interesting. But yeah, I like Duke in this one as well.
I was just gonna call out, and I don't know what their lines are gonna be down the road, but there's a very realistic shot. What's Texas Tech's record right now? They're 6-3.
They have two
I
losses.
think they're 7-2.
Seven and
Yeah.
two. There's a very real shot that they lose to Arkansas and Duke, and they're sitting there at 7-4. And I think that is a team, after those games that maybe you're getting some points and some spreads. Teams that you kind of written them off. They've got four losses. They might have fell out of the rankings. This is a team that I would watch towards conference play that I think is really going to start to gel on the back end, and you're going to get good value in a lot of those games.
I agree. And their second conference game is at Houston too, so another tough one right off the bat. I mean, the Big 12 has been impressive to me so far in the non-conference. Houston had maybe they haven't been as good as expected, but I think they're going to figure out and be a great
They'll
team.
be
Iowa
fine.
State, Texas Tech, Baylor's not
BYU.
at the top. Yeah, BYU obviously, but Baylor's a tough out. I think I'm pretty sure I saw it in the latest AP poll that Big 10, SEC, and Big 12 each have six teams ranked. That's 18 out of the 25 right there. So it seems like it's pretty evenly split by conference this year.
All
Yeah,
right.
no, the Big 12 is going to be a little bit more exciting, I think, than I initially thought, especially, back to if Darren Peterson comes back for Kansas, what does that look like?
Hmm.
He can change a whole team with a snap of fingers. So Arizona being
Yep, didn't even mention
much
Arizona.
much better than people thought they were going to be. Iowa State, with some of the statements that they've made thus far, like Big 12's looking like a more exciting race than I think we all felt pretty comfortable, picking Houston to win that conference. And
Hmm.
now I think there's probably three or four teams that could win it.
Agreed.
All righty. I'll ask you guys up until this point, what team has surprised you the most, good or bad? Josh.
Um, I I think Arizona is a good one, but I'll give you a different. I'll say Michigan State. Michigan State. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about their Duke game. They've been really impressive to me. I didn't really expect them to um look as dominant as they have, but maybe that's what I get for downing Izzo after all these years. So, Michigan State to me has been the most surprising team.
What about you, Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, there's several candidates. I know we all obviously had uh, thought pretty highly of Kentucky coming into the year, and it's been a rough go for them. So that's sort of an obvious one. I'll say North Carolina. I've been really impressed with the resume that they put together so far. I mean, I know Kentucky is not quite maybe the quality win right now. It doesn't look like what we thought like preseason, but um, you got to win against Kansas in the Champions Classic. You had they had a rough go against Michigan State, but a lot of teams have, and have pretty much taken care of business and played pretty solid otherwise. I mean, Caleb Wilson is awesome. He's quickly becoming one of my favorite players to watch. Visar has been great for them. Seth Trimble has kind of answered the bell when I know we talked or I talked in the preseason show about, you lost Ian Jackson and Cadeau, and I felt like Seth Trimble was probably the most productive out of those three and probably the best piece to hang on to of those three. Um, he's been really solid. Um, he's missed some time, so once he's able to get back and get going, but he looked good in those first couple games. So North Carolina has been a pleasant surprise for me because I think we had kind of written them off and maybe even said that Hubert Davis's job could be on the line coming into this year. So been really impressed with them and interested to see how they compete going into ACC play.
I'll uh I'll take Iowa State. I know we talked about it earlier. I mean, the wins that they've had have been great. And again, I when they play in that tough conference, they get at home. That's a giant home court advantage. They've won a lot of these tough games, these coin flip games on the road or a neutral site. I think their game travels very well, like their coach. They've surprised me pleasantly. I do think there's room. It seems like they've won a lot very early. There's room for them to slip a little bit, but up until this point, they're my biggest surprise. One
Yeah.
one last question before we go. Who's your Naismith Player of the Year up until this point through week 6? A lot of good young freshmen. There's been a lot of good basketball. There's been a lot of bad basketball.
I think it's got to be Boozer for me right now.
Yeah.
I think just what
Yeah.
he does for Duke and how good of a team Duke is, especially when he's on the floor. It's to your point, Peyton. There's a ton of candidates, and the race is nowhere near over. But if I had to pick somebody right now today, I think it's got to be him.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I think Boozer, Wilson, Braden Smith, kind of maybe the three that are standing out the most right now. Sure, I'm forgetting someone, but what about GP?
I'll go with Yaxel. He's been
Yeah,
It's a good
I
one.
thought about.
he's been very good up until this point. I think it helps that, he was a highly touted guy in the offseason, a lot of national media attention. He plays at a big program like Michigan, kind of like Boozer. He's been great. Uh, who else did I had? I had someone else that we didn't talk about, but yeah, I would go with Yaxel.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well,
Yeah, they it's that Michigan team with what they've got in their front court is stupid.
Hmm.
But yeah, Yaxel's been awesome. I thought about him as well.
Well, all righty. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to, again, Ball Up Top, our 6th episode. Again, appreciate you guys for listening and engaging. Again, follow and like and subscribe on our YouTube account, our Spotify, as well as, give us any ideas in the comments or DMs on our Instagram. We're trying to, post some more reels, give you guys some more accessible content. And again, we'll be posting our picks, 3 or 4 times a week. But appreciate you guys for listening. And that's all.